well, we're gonna skip lunch today because we need to do this. We're gonna not have this after hours connection because we need to do this. Think carefully. I had to think carefully of those because those are so very important. The team needs to know that we will still be together through hurdles. We will celebrate. And it's so very key. It must be part of your, and I'm sorry I get back to budget because that was just part of my world the entire time. If you don't have the budget, if you don't have the stability, you don't have the commitment as a leader to challenge your leaders to keep that budget, to keep those things in there, then you cannot share that with your team. So be strong, leaders. Be strong with your finance, with your planning, with your destination type activities, right? And stay with your team there. Walk with them through the failures, through the hurdles.
Welcome to the Lead Boldly podcast, where strategy meets action and leaders go from dreaming to doing. If you're a purpose-driven change maker, ready to turn stalled plans into sustainable results, this show is your blueprint. Hosted by strategist and executive coach Deondra Wardelle, owner of On to the Next One Consulting. Each episode showcases bold leaders who bring strategy to life through people development, policy deployment, and continuous improvement. Tune in and gain the clarity, courage, and the tools you need to turn big ideas into real impact and make strategy a daily practice for your team.
Today's guest is someone who made a lasting impact on my leadership journey, Robert Elliot. Robert is a U.S. Navy veteran and global operations leader with over 30 years of experience in electronic manufacturing, supply chain lifecycle management, and SaaS-based solutions. His career has taken him from walking the production floors of Memphis and Brussels to building high-performing teams across Asia and the United States. What truly sets Robert apart is his servant leadership style of management and his dedication to people development, continuous improvement, and creating a workplace culture where trust, excellence, and a little fun all coexist. He's earned awards from companies like Hewlett-Packard and Google, but the proudest title that he owns are Dad and Grandpa. Let's welcome Robert Elliot to the Lead Boldly podcast. Robert, hi. How are you?
Hi, Deondra, and everyone watching. Thank you so much for having me. I'm humbled to be with you today. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you for saying yes and for joining.
Of course.
So glad to have you.
Of course, I would not miss it.
Yes. So, Robert, one of the things I remember most about working with you, you prioritized fun. So the first question that I want to ask, I want to start out having a little fun in this interview. If your leadership style were a car, what make and model would it be and why?
Well, first of all, Deondra, I'd like to give you a little accolade for that question. Very reflective question, right? To say, okay, what kind of car was I perceived? And what kind of car did I want to be? So a little egg shake for you, right? On the question and the quality of questions. Thank you so very much. To answer your question, I thought about as I think about that, maybe a Chevy Suburban, right? It's something that has a team in it, something that's welcoming, something that is secure, something that we move together. It's a longer journey than a shorter journey, and everyone's welcome. And so I hope that my leadership skills were accepting, long-term focused, if that makes sense. And we're all in the Chevy Suburban together.
I think that is such a phenomenal description, and using a car to describe your leadership style, because that's what stands out most for me. You have always been very team focused, and keeping in mind that we were all on a journey together and that we were in the car together. And so I think that's perfect. And another thing, again, just this goes back to how well you study people and how well you recognize the individuality. The fact that you had your own makeshift praise egg. Yes. We're gonna have to fix that so that you get an official praise egg.
I had a little bit of time to get that done, but I'm shaking it up.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, Robert, let's go back in time a little bit.
Okay.
To the early 2000s. What do you remember about your own early leadership journey, and how did it shape the leader you've become today?
I remember being a follower in many ways, right? A follower to the people that worked with me, right? Working with you and all of our peers in Louisville at the time. I remember being a follower to my leaders, which were excellent, and they promoted team environments. They promoted a budget that supported that. They supported a stable environment where I was comfortable to have that relationship with my team. They promoted that relationship with my team, with our team, if you will. And when the team felt that as I did, it was a natural building environment where success and failure was experienced together. We were allowed to stand up after we failed. And I received that leadership journey in that time frame from both the people that I was working with and the people that I was working for. I enjoyed working with the team. We're working with people like you, where you taught me how to be empathetic, sympathetic to problems of our customers, to problems of our team, and be able to address those together. And so I think that personal communication, that personal connection that was provided to me by the people that I work with and the people that I worked for, that was a real impact on my leadership journey. And being provided the tools, the stability, and the emotional support that you're doing the right thing, that you're making the right moves within your organization. It built a lot of confidence in myself. So having the ability to learn from everyone around you, that was part of my leadership journey at the time. And I made some mistakes, and I feel like I did some very, very fruitful things as well. So that was part of my journey at that time in my career.
You know, Robert, you talk about making mistakes, and it takes quite a bit of humility and reflection to realize when something may not have gone as planned, or the success you were hoping to achieve did not exactly measure up or meet that expectation. And, one of the things that stands out about your leadership style is you were very transparent about when those things didn't go as expected. And as a result of that, it made it okay for, when there were different things that we as a team may have struggled with, that we felt comfortable coming to you because we didn't feel like it was us against upper management. Because, in every capacity that I know about you and your history, you've always been in a senior leadership role. And you really modeled what it meant to have an open door policy. And so, is there anything in particular, as you think again back to your early leadership journey, why it was so important for you to be transparent about when things didn't go as expected, and really not hiding that from the team and letting the team know that sometimes things don't go as expected and that's okay?
Sure. I learned that lesson very succinctly I think you were part of the team. And that, just to share an experience, I was given a very strong leadership role, a regional director of operations role, and we expanded to a nearby city. And that program I failed at. I failed miserably, right? And very quickly over a few months. And the leadership at the time allowed me to study why I failed, talk to them why I failed, and then also give a true recognition of why it wouldn't happen again. Right? What did you learn? And Robert, what are you going to do differently? And why would you lead differently? the lesson there was you are allowed to fail, and it's about how you stand up. Now, failure cannot be consistent. Okay, it cannot be forever. So when it comes to being ready to accept failure, right, and leaders must, right, they must accept failure with themselves and their team and their leadership. For me, failure, the majority of the time, I'd like to think, was planned. I was ready for both answers of our performance. If things went our way, if we satisfied the customer, great, that's the easy path. If we didn't satisfy the customer or ourselves, then okay, we thought about that. We had our next step. We were prepared, I'd like to think, most of the time. And so when I think of our young leaders and they're preparing for growth and strategic challenge and risk, look at that risk. Prepare your first answer. Prepare your next step. Be ready for both answers. You will fail, and that's fine. That's okay. It's about how you stand up and how you tell your team and yourself that you've learned and that it won't happen again. So that is what I learned about failure at that time, because I have my own scars, and those scars were healed with kind leadership, further education, and commitment. And when you talk about the team being able to fail together, that specific team in Louisville was fantastic. That was a sibling type environment, I felt, right? That we would have our sibling rivalries internally, but no one outside that building was going to challenge our family. we were a great family, both from the personal and the business side. I work today, and some of our challenges for our new leaders today is providing that when we are not in the same building, when we're working remotely, when we're a little further apart than what we were able to enjoy, Deondra. Right at that time, we were together as a family. We could go to lunch. We could go after work and enjoy those things. That's a challenge today for our new leaders, and there's things that I'm working on to help that in our environment today, of that sibling type environment that I enjoyed, right? Where we were brothers and sisters along the way, and we were family. I think that connection allowed us to fail, stand up, and ultimately succeed, because we succeeded a lot more than we failed, I promise you.
That is so true. When you talk about the connections and the relationships and even the lessons learned from when things went as expected and when they didn't go as expected, that reminds me so much of the development, the leadership development that you cultivated. Although there were a number of training programs that the leadership team and all of staff were able to take advantage of, you cultivated a mini leadership development program, especially among the leadership team. And I think it was possibly the case that so many of us were new to leadership and the capacity and the positions that we were in. And something that you always did is you gifted us books. Freakonomics is one of the first books you gave us. And I still have every book that you gifted to us. And I remember, we had to read these, we had to be prepared to discuss them and look at ways to apply them in our work. And so, you always found ways just to make sure that we were being developed. So where did your passion for this type of leadership development originate?
Wow, that's very reflective as well. And I would say the passion for improvement and self-study, if I could relate those to what we're talking about and how we share that came from being maybe self-motivated a little bit, right? Knowing that not all of your advancement is going to be given to you. Not all of your study is going to be provided, right? Long term, and things have even changed now since that time, where self-study is even more important today and less provided by corporations, because those training budgets of traveling to a class or an AMA course. Those type things are very, very beneficial, but sometimes, or I won't say sometimes, it's different than what it was before, where we had the opportunity to share those things together in the same building again and share a book. So today, I like to think those strategies can be deployed differently, right? When we were together, that leadership and that self-study for me personally was a position drive, right? It was a little bit of ego, right? I want to be the next person. There was a lot of personal goals, if you will. When you think of your career, there are business goals in there that you have, and that's one photograph. And then there's personal goals that are a little more internal. Some of those are financial. Some of those are emotional with relationship and such and family, and you want to advance your career. Sharing that information and having my siblings, my team in Louisville join me in that journey of self-education and advancement is also part of the reason that I share. I learned this lesson from a gentleman, if I may mention his name, Hartmut Liebel. He sent me books from his library, and that's where I learned that lesson, to share the library. I don't doubt that some of the books on everyone's shelves are from Hartmut Liebel that he gave to me to read. So that's an example, again, where I learned from my leaders, a great set of leaders that would share with me, taught me to share with my team, because it's not handed to you. Tell your team that you have to go get it. And here's some study points. If we can understand what our business needs to be successful, and then tie that in with what that person needs to be successful. And that takes the connection, Deondra, right? You may have a person on your team. What's important to them? Well, it's important to them that they have time off. It's important to them that they're with their family, that they're there at night, because they tell you, oh, I need to be home. I need to be home, those type things. And you communicate and you can hear that. And you can put an environment in place for that person. And if you can make the connection of the business success with the personal success, and you can create that environment, you're going to need self-improvement. You're going to need to work with that person and identify with them. Here's your next steps for your personal goals. I think we did a good job with that, Deondra. I think when you look at all the people up and down that hallway in Louisville, there's a lot of success in that team. We identified our next steps and our personal goals very well. You did, right? Not me. You as a team did in the morning meetings every day, where you talked to each other, right? And you were transparent with each other, not with me. I just wanted everyone to work together every day. And everyone did that so well, right? With the transparency. It was easy with that team to share and to grow together. Again, look at that hallway and all the names in that hallway, Deondra. There's a lot of success there, right? So that environment that you're talking about of sharing, self-improvement, it works. And it really works as long as you have those two things tied together, the personal and the business, and I think you'll be successful.
So I want to dig a little deeper into that question, and this is why. And it's particularly for the audience. A number of people who listen to this podcast are senior leaders. So you mentioned a name, Hartmut Liebel, who was a person who would send books to you. So in the context of that working environment at the time, what was, and I remember Hartmut, great leader. Specifically, what was Hartmut's title?
Hartmut was the CEO of Jabil Global Services at the time, a division within Jabil Circuits on the manufacturing side. And he was a longtime leader there. And he oversaw a great amount of growth within the company, from U.S.-based business over to Europe and expanding throughout the globe. And I was so grateful to be a part of that, and his leadership and just the little things of books and the investment that he made in me in classes, and an investment that he made in me personally around my personal health and my management of my personal health. Those things that he had a connection with me that makes me committed to him. right, as a leader, because he made an effort to connect with me, even though he only saw me face to face 2 or 3 times a year at most.
Mm-hmm. And so the reason I asked about, Hartmut's title, it's that ripple effect, and it's also succession planning. So just as Hartmut poured into you, you then poured into us with the book sharing and the other, pearls of wisdom that you provide and opportunities for learning in our leadership journey. And then you encouraged us to pass that same information on to our teams and those people who we were managing and leading. And as a result of that, not only did it make us stronger leaders, when you talk about looking up and down that hallway, when you advanced and you went on to your next career, well, the success did not stop because so much had been poured into us. And then the other members of the team began to advance and took on additional leadership roles. And then if I virtually, with my creative imagination, look up and down that hallway now, those leaders who are part of that team are all across the globe accomplishing major things, starting with something as small as how the CEO, and I don't want to say small because that's not insignificant, but I just really wanted to call that out of how leaders, and when they lead boldly, truly make a difference on the impact of others.
It sure does. And I can't stress that enough. And when I think of that hallway also, Deondra, I think of the diversity of that hallway, right? I think of as you talked about young leaders, we were all young leaders and we were from different places, right? We were a group of people from diverse backgrounds, cultures, challenges, and it seemed like we really didn't care at the time because we had that business goal and our sibling rivalries in place, right? And we didn't accept each other's laziness or those type things. We picked each other up when we were having those challenges. We didn't. We just didn't worry about the diversity part of it, and that's one thing I'm very proud of. Is I think about that hallway, and I don't want to go too down a rabbit hole here. But that was a wonderful team, right? With multiple backgrounds of ages and everything else that comes with it. And I'm so very proud that we were able to work together. And as you pointed out, when you look at the names of that hallway, there's a lot of success there, and we're all a part of that. And yes, they will continue to drive that success down into their teams, and I'm sure they are, right? Yes, very proud of that team.
Mm-hmm. I want to add one more thing to what you talked about in terms of the diversity of the team. And then we'll get back on topic and what I'm loving so much about our time together right now, this is so on par with how our conversations have always gone. We can just talk forever and a day, but the thing about the diversity, and I will say this as a woman on the team, on the leadership team, as a woman, as a Black woman, as a full-figured woman, I knew that I was part of the team. And I never had to hide a part of myself or shirk or shy away. I could bring, you hear the term now, bring your whole self to work. Is it really safe to do so? And one of the things that really stood out about the leadership style and the environment that you cultivated among us as young leaders, not young in age, but young in our tenure with leadership, is you wanted us to be authentic. And it was important that we respected one another. Now, we were a competitive group. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But at the end of the day, we all recognized that we were rowing in the same direction, aligned with the same purpose of ensuring that we were delighting our clients and at the same time developing team members. And I never had a question about that. And so, it's important to call that out, so much so that I've had a number of managers. My mom still remembers you and asks about you. And so, that is so important that, in having those diverse teams, celebrating that diversity and allowing people to bring their diverse thought, their diverse experiences, all those things to the forefront, because that's what helps to make the team strong. So let me get back on target, because we'll go off and start talking about, recipes that mamas put together and all that stuff. And that's not what the folks want to hear about. At least I don't think so. So you have speaking of diverse, your background in manufacturing and supply chain principles and automation and all the things with technology. Many of the people who listen to this podcast are not-for-profit leaders facing resource constraints and high complexity. How can your experience in supply chain and all that you know about manufacturing, what are some things that you can share that would help them operate even more efficiently?
That's a great challenge, a huge challenge for our nonprofit leaders. When you're looking at those challenges of risk and revenue with a nonprofit organization, the risk might be a key point to look at, and look for stability in your supply chain. With manufacturing and supply chain, reverse logistics, repair, all of those are very close to the customer because you're one sale, one shipment. So you're very close to your end user. So you look for stability. I think that process crosses into many different businesses. Almost every business buys something. They procure something. They have a procurement department. So they need planning. They need stability there. Will those vendors be there for you in the future? Will they be there at the same price? That's key. Your team. You can talk to your team. Now you're really looking at instability with non-profit organizations. Some people are working on the side with their organizations. Sometimes their availability is volatile, right? If you will. And these are challenges for these leaders that large companies maybe are a little more stable, and it actually might be easier to lead those items because you have a vendor contract. You vetted that vendor. You have a portion within your company that can do that with you. If you're a leader of a nonprofit, I think that what I have learned in my tenureship is stability, predictability, and then risk management. If you can identify those things and then tie that to your team will understand that and walk with you because they will understand, yes, here's our long-term goal. Here's our challenge. We need to go out and fundraise. We need to go collect. We need to go market. And then we need to execute. And then we need to celebrate, right? And all of those need stability, risk management, and forethought. So when I think of that type of leadership, one, it frightens me because I think it's harder than what I do today, right? So much respect for those leaders, so difficult. You think about it all night. You go to bed at night with it on your brain. You wake up and it might be the first thing you think of in the morning, and it's endless. It's endless many times because of those challenges. So if I were in that position, I'm not. So I try to relate to the question. I would look for stability and to try to make sure your team understands that, because they will join and walk with you if you've done your homework properly.
Mm-hmm. And getting the team to join in. So, something that you really championed was being transparent about information. Things we got excited about and things that we were uncertain about. And, especially when it came to doing budgets and forecasting, we had very open, honest conversations. And then one of the things is, amidst whatever challenges may have been taking place, you really encourage stretch goals and pushing us. Like if we came in and say, Robert, this is what we're dealing with. These are the constraints. This is what's going on in the market. This is what's going on in the industry. This is where we are. And you'd say, okay, I need X% more. And we would be like, what? And we would go back to the drawing board. And, over time, what we learned is you weren't so much looking for a number as you were wanting us to really grow, to have that mindset of thinking outside of the box. And so when you talk about, where things may connect between corporations and those who are for profit compared to nonprofit, how is, what is your approach to setting those team goals, for looking at ways to ensure that there's a disaster recovery plan in place and that you're responsive, where both the goals are both ambitious yet achievable?
That's one of the greatest challenges in goal setting, is being inside that window where your business thrives and you're doing the right thing for the company or for your company or the organization, whomever that might be, and the right thing for the employee as well. We talked about having the business goal and the personal win. What is the personal win? Well, the personal win is that I meet my business goal and that I get a raise and I have stability in my work and I feel good. And those are all the things that I'm going to get from that goal setting. Sometimes history can help you with your goal setting. Having that open conversation as a team can help goal setting. Getting a reference. Don't set your goals by yourself. Right? Look around you and ask people about those goals. You may look at a peer that's been in your position before and say, here's my targets for the year, my stretch goals as well. Are these achievable? Do you have any experience there? There's a lot of experience out there, especially in supply chain. But for me, this is not a new business. It's very mature. So I have quite a bit of bench strength to refer to for problems. There's really not a lot of new problems in my world, if you will. I do believe in change management, and this is key to getting people on board for the long term. There's a balance between the destination and the journeyman. And the destination needs to be achievable, and you need to, we talked about that a little bit earlier, you need to celebrate that as a team. Getting harder today with the remote work to celebrate that as a team when you have a goal achieved. So if the team can be on pace with the business goal, and you can tie that to the personal side, that is the window you're looking at. Challenges with each. The business goal, your boss will ask you for more every single number you put in. Your revenue number, your cost, your training, your budgets, your EBITDAs, all of those things that you need to submit in a budget and a P&L will be challenged, every single line. So think of it in a line format. It is challenging, it is detailed, and it takes time. But it must be done. And you need those transparent conversations. As a team, I think about those business conversations. I think about the engineering conversations. I think about the customer conversations, how we satisfy the customer. And when we set those goals, setting them as a team helps, right? When you think about what you can do as a team for improvement. I also like to think when you're getting people on board that I don't know how to say this off the top of my head, but one good apple breeds a good tree, right? Right? I don't like to talk about bad apples. I like to talk about good apples. And if you have a good environment, a good spark in the room, people will join in. They'll get in the Chevy Suburban and they'll be with you, and they'll have that destination goal as well as their personal. It's difficult, right? And you have to really be concerned about that personal connection with your team, that it's tied in with their personal goals, right? Do they want to be advanced? Are they happy with where they're at today? Do they need to be home on time? That's where you will get buy-in. If you do your homework as your business leader, you've talked to your superiors, you talk to your peers, and then you have a proper message for your destination and your journey people, they will buy it. And it takes a little time.
You talk about everyone in the Chevy and the destination and journey, realizing that there'll be times, and continuing on with the journey and the road trip in the Chevy. There'll be times that you may run into construction or you may have some delays but ultimately you know where it is that you're heading and you're determined to get there. That's so important as it relates to visioning and even looking at long-term strategic planning. But something that is also incredibly important is that along the way, you take time to celebrate. Yes, you shake that praise in. Yes. And one of the things, we had obstacles. We had different things that we encountered individually as leaders and as a group leadership team. One thing that always stood out, and I see this now, even as I follow you on LinkedIn and the different things that you share, is you always found a way to make leadership enjoyable. Whether it was bowling activities, trust building activities, company-wide celebrations. And you talked about how now oftentimes we're in hybrid or virtual environments. It's still important that there is time that we factor in fun. But I'm curious to hear from you. Why do you believe fun is essential as you're developing leaders, as you're developing the company culture, especially in environments where the stakes are high and, there may be risk and things like that? So why do you believe that fun is so essential in the workplace?
That's a great point to discuss. And for me, again, I was taught by my leadership that the celebration, right, fun, if you will, right, the celebrations as a team, being together as a family, was so very important because as a professional, right, and working so hard in your career, you don't get an off season, right? You don't get 3 months off. Sometimes you don't even get a week off or days off or hours off at times. So when you do have that time together, it needs to be valuable. It needs to be positive because we are 24/7, 365 corporate athletes all the time. We work very hard at being professionals. And the team that we had a little specifically in Louisville at the time brought me into that joy because they worked so hard together. They enjoyed spending time together. They didn't run away from each other after work. It was a wonderful experience because of the challenges. And when we had hurdles, we came together. If we remember, when we started together in that facility, there was a little disconnection between the leadership. And we decided as a team that we were going to get together every day and we were going to talk about our actions face to face every morning. And that meant we talked face to face about our celebrations as well, all the good things. And that expounded to all that environment, right? That environment. So the environment partially was from the team and from the leadership that pushed that upon me, right? To have that in the budget. And when I'm thinking of the leadership today, and I'm thinking about the stability of what we talked about a moment ago with employee satisfaction and goals, part of that leadership role is having the commitment to those activities. Sometimes those activities can be the first to go when you come across a hurdle. Oh, we're gonna skip lunch today because we need to do this. We're gonna not have this after hours connection because we need to do this. Think carefully. I had to think carefully of those because those are so very important. The team needs to know that we will still be together through hurdles. We will celebrate. And it's so very key. It must be part of your, and I'm sorry I get back to budget because that was just part of my world the entire time. If you don't have the budget, if you don't have the stability, you don't have the commitment as a leader to challenge your leaders to keep that budget, to keep those things in there, then you cannot share that with your team. So be strong, leaders. Be strong with your finance, with your planning, with your destination type activities, right? And stay with your team there. Walk with them through the failures, through the hurdles. right? If you remember you and I sitting in your office, looking at that screen and slide after slide, day after day, my goodness, it was so difficult. What a hurdle we had, so many of them. But we got through it together, right? We did okay. And you must have the commitment as a leader to that celebration. You can't let your team go with just hurdles.
And that consistency of commitment, that a leader, that you can go to your manager, the supervisor, the leader, in those times that are challenging and in those times of change. And I think, and to your point, not only do we stay centered on the ultimate goal, what it is we're looking to accomplish, the purpose and mission that drives us, those customers who we are working with, whether it's delivering a product in the for-profit world or a service in the not-for-profit, staying centered on that, and then keeping the team together. And keeping the team together is, yes, we can have good times, but it's so important to have trust and that accountability during times of change, so that during some of those more difficult hurdles, I think about you took me back, and I felt like I was back in my office, and I remember the presentation and I remember the Excel workbooks that we went through. And what I appreciate so much about that is I knew that I was not alone. And I knew that I could go to my manager. I know that I could rely on other members of the leadership team for support, that I was not in it alone. And especially during times of uncertainty and times of change, having that culture of where, you can have that open communication and already having those practices in place, makes it just a little easier to navigate and to know that ultimately you will get over those hurdles and over those Excel workbooks that went on for days and days and days. Days, it felt like days and days. So, Robert, what advice would you share with leaders who are looking to, grow and develop their teams, specifically around the different leadership skills that we've talked about, and building, that trust and that accountability, but they're unsure about where or how to begin? What advice would you give?
That first step is so key that you're talking about. I think they're right. And having an open conversation with a person to talk about what is their long-term goals. And maybe you have experience with that. Maybe you don't. Maybe you need to have another mentor or someone come in that has some experience in that lane that they want to be in. And then identifying that next step, letting them know, I'm here with you on that step. I will walk with you. We will fail together. We will succeed together, because in business, that is a reality, right? We will all succeed or fail together. And that message needs to be clear to a person that maybe you're working with on their next step, their first step. Recently, I had a young person come in and say, look, I'm looking to advance my career. I don't need it today, but I'm really looking for long-term. And so very simple, 2 sentences. Have you thought about a PMP, and have you done any study there? A week later, the person came back to me with a PMP engagement, and they're almost finished. So if you can just have that good conversation, I think, over a cup of coffee or over a lunch, a little bit of time, show your interest, be engaged, that person will take that first step with you. And then once they have that success, then they will go to the next step easily. They will want to. That success just breeds itself so easily with when you have the team that wants it, right? Not every person will accept that or move forward. So be ready for that as well as a leader, that if you provide opportunity for someone and you talk about engagement and the next step, okay, they didn't do it. Oh, well, geez, okay. Well, let's have a conversation. Why? Because we had such a good conversation on the front end. Let's follow up. Again, I think it's so key to understand personal goals with a person to help them with that first step. Myself, my strategy, how I do make that connection is I share my scars, right? Many times when I'm talking to someone and they're looking to perform something, I'll tell them how I failed at it, how I was no good, instead of trying to tell them how good I was or how I did it so well. No, I'll tell you what I did wrong so you don't do what I did. That, for me, is an easier way to make a connection, sharing the things that I may have not done as well as I wanted to, opportunities that I've had in my experiences. And for me, I find that makes a connection for that next step. Yes, I've wanted to be a business leader, and I was a director at the time. And for me, I had to do my boss's job. That was my next step. I had to find little things that my boss was doing to make that connection. That was my first step, my next step. And it just bred that thought process for me, right? So that was my personal connection. It takes a little time for leaders to have that conversation with everyone. It's part of your review cycle, maybe part of a soda after a nice event, right? You had a nice event of building things or giving things, and you're at a nonprofit event. Take that time to have that little conversation. What's important? So key for me. And I felt that I've done that well over the years. Many times I've failed at that and not had the proper vision, right, with the team. So I think that's key when you're going to get someone to the next step, is the one conversation.
Mm-hmm. So what I heard is clarity, connection, and communication. That clarity, being really clear on the overarching goal, what it is that the team is working toward, but understanding what that end goal is for the individual.
Yes.
And then that connection, and part of that connection is the humility and showing your scars, as you said, or lessons learned from your own experiences, and forming that level of trust that then breeds to or leads to having those open communication. And then not a one and done, but the follow-up. Like the person you mentioned that's working on their PMP, their project management certification. The idea wasn't just sprinkled out there. The person came back and is doing check-ins. And that's all a part of that, that whole development process where, you're focused on people development and ensuring that people are successful and they're thriving at what they're doing. Robert, this has been such a great conversation. We are now at the point of the podcast. This has gone through evolutions, a true continuous improvement
right
mindset is at play here. It started out as rapid fire. And I was like, I really don't like that.
Okay.
Then I called it crown jewels because, I believe leading is a real calling. One of the reasons why I wear a crown every day. But now, and we talked about this at the beginning before we started recording, the importance of reflecting and having that time for reflections. And so at this point in the podcast series, I'm calling these Royal Reflections.
Okay.
And, and Royal Reflections, this is a space where we celebrate the truth that leadership is a noble calling. And it's not based on titles, but on purpose and stewardship and service. So these final questions and the Royal Reflections are designed to leave our audience with insights to guide their own bold leadership journey and, to glean some insights and good information from you on their journey. So the first question, what does lead boldly mean to you?
Leading boldly is not being afraid. Not being afraid to say, what would I do if I was not afraid? What would I do? Would I have this conversation? Would I step into this new environment? Would I challenge my team? It leads me to a conversation example where we had within your business unit, We had a challenge with the team, and we had an event over the weekend to improve the processes. And two leaders from a completely different division came over and gave us some improvements in our cosmetic processes there, if I remember right. And leading boldly has that change in mind and has that lack of fear. And fear can be addressed with preparation for me personally. If I'm prepared for both answers or maybe multiple answers, then I'm less fearful to lead. If I'm not prepared, if I haven't done my homework, if I haven't studied, then how can I lead my team and have them walk with me? So leading boldly is being personally prepared, being personally responsible for the answers that may come into play from your team's activities. And then getting that to the team as we discussed today in different ways, right? So leading boldly is very personal for me, right? Having those characteristics, that preparation, that level of detail, because it will be demanded by the challenges that come in front of you. So leading boldly is preparation, is communication, and again, preparing for both answers.
So, you are an avid reader. I know that you believe in development of yourself and development of others. So if you would share a favorite quote, a leadership resource, or a habit you recommend to our audience, and you're welcome to share all of the above. So share as freely as you want. No pressure, Robert. No pressure.
Oh, wow. I've been focused on personal health when it comes to personal habits. So getting back to the corporate athlete message, right? And structuring my day is important for me on the personal side. Having the planning in place, right? That destination, knowing my calendar, knowing what's coming in front of me makes me comfortable. The personal health side has been a true focus for me. Lately, a little bit around sleep and making sure that I'm rested, making sure that I'm prepared, making sure that my environment supports those goals for business and personal. So I might offer people to look at your habits. Are you taking care of yourself? There was a lot of time, to share one of my failures. I went some years where I didn't take care of myself very well. And I was abusing myself and not sleeping well and playing too hard and just doing the wrong things. And I had to refocus. So for me recently, it's been personal health. And I think for our leaders today that are challenged with time management, that's even so more important, right? Ensure you're taking care of yourself, you're eating right, you're exercising properly. And that will give you the energy and the focus to do the other things that you need to do. I received a 360 review at one point where it included my family. And the family came back and said, Robert's tired at night. Robert doesn't attend family functions any longer. And it was an awakening moment that I needed to be more physically fit if I wanted to do these things. So I had a little focus there. The mental side of the business has also been a focus for me lately. Being mentally prepared for life, right? Life has so many challenges with it that brings along. So take care of yourself, both physically and mentally, and that will help your business challenges. That's been my recent work, Deondra.
That's good work, Robert, because we cannot categorize ourselves. We can't say, you talk about bringing your whole self to work, when you're tired. And especially now, there are a lot of studies about the impact of being burnt out, and family that having, and whatever family looks like, being able to spend time with family. So, going back and recognizing with all the stuff, all the things, all the impact that leaders are making, one of the things that's so important, that advice we get when we board a plane, that we put the oxygen, our own oxygen mask on first so that we can make sure that we're taken care of, so that we can do the things that we are called to do and taking care of others, whether it's, whatever environment where we find ourselves leading. And it's not just, in an office space, but even leading with family and things like that. So thank you for that reminder, because oftentimes people forget. We forget. It's 24 hours in the day and we want to try to get everything done, but rest is priority. That's so important.
It is key. And for a business quote, I don't know that I have a singular business quote. One of the thoughts that I have might be, at least recently for me as well, the attention's in the details. I continually need to remind myself of that. When I was prospering as a young engineer and we had a problem, we had a change order that comes out as they typically do. We had a wrong part, and there's little colors on a resistor, and we had identified the wrong color on a resistor, and the wrong resistor was going in the part, and it was a failure on our part. I took that resistor and I taped it to my display, so I would remember that the attention is in the details. And today, when I'm working documents, when I'm working contracts and such, which I do mostly today in my world, I really have to focus on the detail. So I remind myself of that. The attention is in the detail. Stay focused, stay laser focused, outperform your peers, right? Outperform your peers. And the attention's in the details. For my business, that's my focus today.
Okay. Great pearls of wisdom. Great advice, great reminders. Robert, what's one of the best ways for people to follow not only your words of wisdom, all of your great tips that you have to share about leadership, and then the really cool things that you're doing right now? What's the best way for folks to follow you?
Sure. For me, I'm on LinkedIn, right? I'm not, I don't have any marketing sites or anything to go look at. What I might suggest for people to do is talk to your peers, see what they're listening to, what they're talking about, right? The podcast, and there's so much information out there today, right? For your self-study and moving forward. I think that's a great opportunity for everyone to have, for that outlook. For myself, we're doing exciting things in supply chain, and anyone that would like to have a discussion or conversation, please feel free to reach out to my LinkedIn page on there, and that's where you can get a hold of me. Thank you.
Cool. Robert, I cannot say thank you enough. For one, it's just we've always remained connected. Spending this time with you today, it has just really filled my cup. And thank you for sharing your expertise in leadership, in global operations, and then, your passion for people. That still comes across and shines so brightly. Your belief in those stretch goals, I'll never forget about those. And, the other thing too, just the talent you have for making leadership both meaningful and joyful. I appreciate that. And then your story overall reminds us that bold leadership can sometimes mean, walking the production floor, or, walking the office space, management by walking around before sunrise, because that's something I remembered about you. You would be there bright and early. The people who were working on third shift, first shift, second shift, they saw you. So that presence, whether it was giving a book or challenging someone's thinking, and especially believing in a team's potential, sometimes more than that team or individual may have believed in themselves. So just thank you for the leader you have always been, the leader you continue to be, and for being with us on the Lead Boldly podcast. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's very humbling, very kind. I feel a part of my teams over the years. I feel that leading the teams that we've been a part of was very easy. People are so kind these days, and they want to work hard, be successful. If you put a smile on your face and you care about your team, it's boundless. Just go enjoy, have fun, make sure your team is having fun, have those conversations. Deondra, your words are so kind and humbling. Again, thank you so very much. Being connected with you throughout the years and seeing what you've done and the contribution that you've made to your environment in Indianapolis and Indiana and with your teams, and now the podcast, Lead Boldly, right? You're an example of leading boldly since I met you, and yet you're asking me how to do it. I think we should switch the screen or something, right? It's so awesome, so incredibly personally satisfying to be with you today and see your efforts. And I'm going to work harder now because of it, because of this experience. I'm going to have some more focus. I'm going to go talk to my team, and you're a wonderful example for all of us. And thank you so very much for this opportunity to speak with you. And you're going to do awesome. And so are your peers and everyone listening today. Thank you so very much. We love Deondra, right? And thank you so much. Lead boldly.
So, Robert, let me say this. At the beginning of the conversation, before we started recording, remember I said, we're not going to go off into any tangents where I ruin my lashes. I will not start crying. I'm so, but just know that I appreciate you. I can't say that enough. So thank you so much for being on. And to our listeners, if you've been looking for a sign to lead with more intention, to invest in your people or build a culture of trust and fun, let today's episode be your sign. Let it be your signal. Don't forget to share this episode and subscribe to the Lead Boldly podcast series, and register for our upcoming Lead Boldly webinar via my website, DeondraWardelle.com. Until then, remember to embrace your royal calling, to lead boldly, build strategically, and impact endlessly. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Lead Boldly podcast with Deondra Wardelle. If today's episode helped you take one step closer from dreaming to doing, be sure to follow the show and subscribe on YouTube. You can also learn more at DeondraWardelle.com. And if you know a leader ready to bring strategy to life through continuous improvement and bold action, share this episode with them. Until the next time, let's continue to lead boldly, build strategically, and impact endlessly.
Keep on moving on.